Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to the Cloud Lunch and Learn sessions. My name is Hugo Barona and today we start our series of sessions related to blockchain. We have Juarez with us, giving us today an overview of blockchain and blockchain on Azure. So I hand over to you, Juarez.
Thanks a lot, Hugo. Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks a lot for joining our session today. It's a pleasure for me to be here and talk about something that I'm passionate about, blockchain and blockchain on Azure. My name is Juarez Jr. I'm an Azure Developer Audience Lead, and I work for Microsoft in Ireland. And here you also have my contact details. So please feel free to reach out to me in case you have questions related to Azure as well as blockchain. Okay. Interesting to say, you can see also my media handle here, and we have a series of blog posts there where I provide all the details considering the demonstration and the project that I'm gonna to present here shortly. Okay, so in case you want to execute all these steps, please make sure that you can also check the resources available on Medium. Okay, so without further ado, let's start. Let's talk a little bit about digital transformation, because at the end of the day, blockchain is an emerging or exponential technology, as we can call it, along with IoT, Internet of Things, and AI, artificial intelligence, the so-called Trinity in merging technologies, right? And blockchain is also important, and digital transformation is something that business leaders are, I would say, investigating currently, because it's about the transformation of their internal business processes, ways to promote innovation and accelerate the execution of your processes, and this new approach and this so-called new normal. We have, the acceleration in terms of adoption of digital services, for example, and digitalization. So it's interesting to say that blockchain is also a key technology that can promote and support that. But what is blockchain? Blockchain is a kind of technology, that involves many different concepts in computing. For example, programming languages, the so-called smart contracts, distributed computing, for example, because we have a network with different execution nodes, security and cryptography, a little bit of cloud native and containers as well, depending on the blockchain protocol. But at the end of the day, in a simplified way, we can consider that blockchain is a kind of database or data store, right? But it's a different one. If you consider a traditional relational or NoSQL database, for example, where you have a database and tables and the records there, for example, and let's say that I have the address table, and my address is record 100, number 100, and I have my house number there recorded as number 45, okay, but the actual number is 80, so it should be 80. With the traditional database, like a relational one, let's say SQL Server, for example, you can run a SQL query and perform an update, a SQL update, and then you can change the data. So the data is mutable, right? But with blockchain, no, the data is actually immutable. So when you have transactions and you have a block, and you have, I would say, a data payload as part of that transaction, and it is recorded on chain, it is there forever. So it's totally immutable. Okay, and this immutability is important because actually it helps to promote a number of benefits and characteristics that we have when you consider blockchain technology. Okay, because for example, blockchain as this different and special database is good for all the scenarios where you have to track what we can call an asset. Okay, it can be a digital asset in case of a digital twin, for example, or it can be, let's say, a mortgage contract. It can be a container. It can be a car part, a car, for example. Anything that has value, you can track it with blockchain them. And with this immutability that I talked about, we can then promote the full traceability, considering the entire life cycle of that given asset. Okay, so I can track and trace this asset, and I have an entire history and historical database to track all the events and all the changes and all the updates that can occur. But the update here is a different thing because, considering again database technology, normally you can have what we can call a physical deletion, for example, or a logical deletion. With blockchain, as there's no way to remove the information, okay, because it's immutable, you can actually implement some software design patterns and architectural design patterns, I would say, and your solution can promote this concept, and I would say have a kind of logical deletion, but in practical terms, the information is always there. So that's why we have this traceability. On top of that, blockchain promotes security and cryptography, as I would say, the backbone of this network. And this is interesting because with blockchain, we have a shared ledger. And this ledger is then shared and distributed across the network. And all the participant nodes, they have a copy of that ledger. So with this distribution and beyond immutability and traceability, we also have distribution and, of course, what we can call in terms of security, the collective ownership of data, and second, a single source of truth. Because the blockchain networks, there are several different, actually 2 or 3 different ways that we can use to classify blockchain protocols and networks. But let's say that we have, for the public ones or the permissionless ones like Bitcoin and Ethereum, the ability to actually start a blockchain node, a Bitcoin node, for example, or a Ethereum node, and join the network without permissions, because it's permissionless. So you don't have to be invited to join. You don't need a special certificate or something like that. But we also have the permissioned networks where, in order to join what we can call a consortium, where you have many participants, normally a founder participant or the company that started that consortium, or a number of companies, depending on how you compose the consortium. And the participant members, they can join, but they need security certificates, configuration, and things like that. And then you can also increase the security and also the privacy in terms of what you are performing in that blockchain and in terms of your business and the processes. So security, any use case and scenario where you need, I would say that this distributed nature, something that's interesting, considering that all the nodes and all the participants have a copy of that ledger, we can say that there's no single point of failure, like in traditional software and solution architectures, because let's say in case you have 100 nodes and 40 nodes are down, for example, due to an outage or something like that, you still can process transactions because all the nodes, they have a copy of that ledger, so you can submit a transaction, for example, propose a transaction, and that will be processed, given that first, the data input is valid, okay, and then the business logic that's expressed in a smart contract, okay, we can call it a software component anyway, because at the end of the day, the smart contract is only a software component expressing business logic, use case scenario, for example, or any functionality in terms of your functional requirements. And you can run the contract. And then we have the last thing, considering this blockchain network and how different it is, what we call the consensus protocol, because then all the participants, they will check the input data and they will be running that with the business logic. And in case both are properly addressed and fulfilled, you can then validate the transaction, and then you can complete a new block and append a new block to the chain. That's why we call it blockchain, because actually we have a chain of blocks where you can track assets with the full traceability that I talked about, immutability. So there are ways that in dispute situations, for example, you can check the entire history and actually, I would say, prove that a transaction was performed, and depending on how you modeled the business entity, you can check timestamp, the modifications, and and how it was before. So with that full traceability, as I said, in dispute situations, there are ways where you can prove that the data was there and who modified the data, and also when it happened, and so on. Okay. So as I explained, blockchain streamlines these processes by establishing a secure shared source of truth, a shared ledger, a shared database, a distributed one with no single point of failures, so that's a scalable and reliable architecture. It's a different network, of course. And everyone in that network has a copy, as I explained. This is critical. We should always remember that this data, we have this collective ownership of data. And the consensus algorithm, there are many different consensus when you consider, as I explained, the public networks or the private, let's call them private networks, permissionless or permissioned networks. And we have proof of work, like in Bitcoin, for example. We have proof of stake, we have BFT, and so many consensus algorithms. For the introduction today here, I'm not going to deep dive into all the details about consensus algorithms and things like that, because as part of this series here, we'll have other presentations where we'll explore the different protocols and advanced topics related to them. Okay. Let's move here. Why blockchain on Azure? Because Microsoft has not only a platform, but also tools and different solutions and services in complement of those that we have as part of our Azure portfolio, that you can combine to create a blockchain network. And why that's interesting? Because blockchain actually is complex. As I said, it involves many things related to computing. So you need to possibly work and govern your infrastructure and your network. And this IT governance and the entire infrastructure required to provision a blockchain network is not an easy thing to, I would say, manage in case you don't have the right tools and the right platform. Okay, I'm talking at the IaaS level, okay, in terms of cloud computing, infrastructure as a service, PaaS, platform as a service, and SaaS, software as a service. But with a platform like the one that we have, the Azure Blockchain Service, you can actually abstract all this complexity, and focus on implementing your smart contract. So it's as easy as deciding about the business logic and the entities, the assets that you want to track with blockchain. You can create a smart contract. You deploy that to the cloud, to our Azure Blockchain Service. And then you think about the client applications. You can decide if you want to have a mobile application, perhaps with iOS or Android, or a web application, or Power Apps, for example, low code environment and low code development, for example, as we have as part of something that Microsoft offers for developers. And then that's it. The entire network, the nodes, the certificates, the ports, the IP addresses, the key stores, the network topology, everything is then managed from a central dashboard provided by the blockchain service, okay? And that's why it's interesting, because this governance and the infrastructure required to run a blockchain network, that can become a separate project. It's not easy, okay? But it's not only that, not only the platform. Microsoft, we also have the blockchain workbench, where you can provision, I would say, an environment where you can perform and accelerate your POCs. You can run the proof of concept there, and it is integrated with many other Azure services like the IoT Hub, Azure, the databases, Active Directory for security, App Insights, Azure Monitor, and so on. And the last one is the Blockchain Developer Kit. the kit is actually composed by two different things. We have first an extension for VS Code, Visual Studio Code. We can call it the de facto IDE and tool for developers nowadays. And it's a very interesting extension because blockchain, beyond this infrastructure and the complexity that I talked about, normally you have to work with several different and new command line tools that are quite specific to blockchain, and it is not easy because you have to, I would say, pass a number of different arguments. And as you have an explosion in considering the number of members in a network, okay, let's say, for example, we have different protocols. As I said, we have Hyperledger by the Hyperledger Foundation, we have Ethereum, we have Bitcoin, and so on. But let's say Hyperledger, for example, in case you want to provision a simple network with one founder and two members, for example, normally you will need, let's say, 25 Docker containers at least to host all the different members, the peer nodes, the CA node, the other node, and so on. And also work with many different command line tools, as I explained. So when you have an extension and a plugin for VS Code like this one, it's good because you can also abstract all the requirements and all the, I would say, complexities in terms of tooling and command line tools and so on, and you can run everything from your development environment. So it's a killer, I would say, application considering your productivity. Let's move here. Let's talk a little bit why blockchain is not for everyone and at the moment, because at the end of the day, blockchain is a different network, as I explained. We call it the Web 3.0, the new network or the world operating system. Some people, they are more radical. They say that actually we can consider that all the applications that we have nowadays, they somehow are, if they don't have, I would say, an extension to a blockchain network or something like that, they are still considered legacy applications because long-term, this Web 3.0 is the network. We are moving towards having the proper infrastructure, also in terms of telecom and things like that, 5G and so on. The synergy with the emerging technologies that I talked about, like when you combine, for example, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning with IoT, for example, location data, you can read an RFID tag, for example, many different sensors and blockchain. And this new network, it's difficult, it's almost impossible for us to imagine, to envision all the, I would say, fantastic solutions that we'll have out of this combination, okay? This blockchain service here, then, as I explained, is fully managed. It is what we call, in blockchain terms, there's an acronym, BaaS, Blockchain as a Service, because you have, as I said, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, and we have BaaS as the ultimate, I would say, abstraction and hiding all the complexity about this IT governance. Because remember, again, IT governance is not easy. One example, Equifax, a company, a short while ago, they use it kind of open source component and deploy that as part of their solution to customers. And some hackers, they exploited a security hole. So considering that blockchain also we use as the core components, a number of different open source components and protocols, as I said, Ethereum, Hyperledger, and many others, for example. It's important to have this governance also in terms of security, and components and a security department. So with the solution like BaaS, as I said, you can abstract everything: security, infrastructure, provisioning, components, I would say off-the-shelf components, integration, all the non-functional requirements, you can abstract and move towards focusing on implementing your smart contracts to track the given assets that you want to track with blockchain, and also the client applications. Okay. We have, as I explained, a very interesting dashboard. We are going to have a demo shortly here where we'll explore some details. And the upcoming sessions will also explore them in, I would say, context of different protocols, as I explained. But this is interesting because, again, with the out-of-the-box open source solution, that you can get from GitHub, for example, in order to have all the metrics about the number of transactions, blocks, and the monitoring side of it, you have to work with command line tools. So it's not so intuitive and user-friendly, considering the productivity and this governance. Let's talk a little bit about where blockchain is valuable. I started to explore that, but at the end of the day, the message here, why I should understand and consider blockchain. Because as I said, when you consider all the different business verticals, manufacturing, healthcare, e-gov, for example, financial services, and so on, all the business processes, all the use cases, there are the points where you need more transparency, you need to remove intermediaries, disintermediate some steps considering your business processes. You need more security, you need privacy, you need to expedite the process by achieving automatic consensus. Because as I explained, that's what we have when you have a network with a single source of truth, one database shared by everyone, the collective ownership of data. There are situations and opportunities to implement blockchain technology. Okay, so all the business verticals that we have here, okay, the business processes, for example, in case you need to track an asset, let's say healthcare, I want to track a medical bed, for example, or any special equipment, okay, that's possible with blockchain. Government, military, for example, in case you need to track, I don't know, ammunition, guns, and things like that, so on. Insurance, let's say that you need to create an entity to represent this an insurance contract and so on, a mortgage contract, So all those use cases, blockchain is a good candidate because you can actually eliminate the need for, I would say, compensated transactions when you have network failures, for example, because the traditional networks, normally you have 2 points, A and B, for example, 2 companies, and they need to send data from one system to another and wait for responses and things like that. But in case you have network failures and things like that, you don't know, depending on the situation, what happened. So you need to actually work to actually fix the transaction in a different way. That will never happen with blockchain. This is just one example, considering how you can expedite the business processes. Okay, let's move here. One example with Starbucks, this is the classic use case for blockchain supply chain management and logistics, but Starbucks, they implemented blockchain with Azure blockchain to track and trace the coffee beans from farm to the table. And you can see here different players. So normally in a blockchain network, you will model and you will provision, depending on how you want to build the consortium, different nodes and business entities to represent the different players here, okay? And then you can provide them with applications and the right visibility. For example, for the customers, you can give them access to a mobile application where they can, for example, we scan a QR code or a barcode and check the entire traceability of a given coffee bean, for example, in the scope of what we call normally a food provenance use case, okay? We have the entire process here with different steps, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. And then you can see the farmer, carrier, several different roles here and participants. They are interested in different information here. But let's say this is good in case you need to keep the beans at a given temperature, for example. Checkpoints, you can implement checkpoints, as I said, with location-based services. You can capture the latitude and longitude information from an assisted GPS, and also combine that with IoT sensors, RFID tags. You can read the bags, for example. So there are many good and different ways that you can combine those technologies that I talked about. But blockchain is good because given that the database is immutable, you know, you can implement the I would say, secure track and trace solution with visibility to all participants in a database that's shared, fully scalable, fully distributed, with the proper security protocols in place, considering both data at rest, you know, storage, but also data in motion, the different protocols for communication and so on. So this is the classic approach, but there are many, many different use cases that you can apply blockchain. Let's talk about blockchain on Azure now, the interesting part. So the idea with Microsoft is, first, we want to give you choice. So we support all, as I said, all the OSS, the open source ledgers. At the end of the day, we want to give you the best tools, the best platform. Even we have code samples and many, I would say, artifacts, code artifacts that you can reuse. But we want to give you the best blockchain developer experience, you know. And the enables are the development kit, as I explained. We'll have that as part of our demo here today. The workbench, perhaps it's a good idea to show the, where is it? Yeah. You can see the workbench here just to give you a glimpse of what I'm talking about. Of course, we are talking about the Azure blockchain service here, okay, with Ethereum as the protocol. But when you provision the workbench, actually, this is something that Microsoft created. So you can also leverage an IoT hub, for example. You have AD here for your user repository, the AAA in security, authentication, authorization, and also the support of auditing with Azure Monitor as well, application insights, you know, with app service, for example, service bus, an API gateway here, the databases and storage here. So the workbench is actually one accelerator that we have that you can use to provision different services along with the Azure blockchain service to accelerate the implementation of your POC. Okay, let me return here. No, where is it? Yes. Okay. I talked about this workbench, okay, and how it provides many services combined in a way that you can expedite the implementation of your network. Of course, GitHub examples, I talked about the dev kit. The dev kit, we have the Visual Studio extension, but there's also a GitHub repository with several different code samples that you can reuse out of the box to work with the Azure blockchain service. For example, let's say if you want to integrate with Twilio for messaging, there's one code sample there to support basic use case, so you can understand how to authenticate, how to send basic messages, and so on. This is just one example, but we have a number of components and code that you can reuse, okay? So before I start the demonstration here, as I explained, blockchain is complex. You can see here a number of different things that you have to consider when you are moving towards deploying a blockchain network. But at the end of the day, with the blockchain platform that we have on Azure and the different tools, you know, Azure Blockchain Service, Development Kit, the extension for Visual Studio Code, the workbench, and so on. We just facilitate tools and the environment so you can focus on writing business logic, okay? As I explained, this smart contract, right? At the end of the day, this smart contract is only one more software component. Depending on the blockchain network, it can vary. For Ethereum and Quorum, for example, normally you have to use a specific programming language called Solidity. It's a kind of DSL, domain-specific language, but at the end of the day, we can consider it a full-fledged block programming language. But for other choices like Corda that we have on Azure, as well as Hyperledger Fabric, you can use languages like Java, Kotlin, JavaScript, and Golang. So this is good because it allows you to actually leverage the existing team and skills that you might have internally, so you don't have to learn a new specific language. That's not a barrier anyway, but it's good in case you can also, I would say, write and create a solution from end to end and use, let's say, JavaScript and Node.js. So without further ado, let's move here to have a quick demo considering the service. Let me change my screen here. Okay. So this is the Azure portal. It's quite easy to create a blockchain instance. Okay, let me just show you here. You click create a resource as usual. You select blockchain here. And then we have the blockchain service. This is the BaaS, the managed blockchain solution on Azure. But as I explained, we can deploy blockchain networks, and we considering the different levels. In case you want to just use VMs, you can go to our marketplace, and there are several VMs there. You just look for Hyperledger, for example, or Corda, and you can deploy a VM. But that will be managed at the, let's say, IaaS level. Okay, so you need to actually work and have a strategy to actually address all the requirements in terms of what those blockchain components will need, considering disk, memory, and processors, and so on. On top of that, we also have a platform. For a Hyperledger Fabric, for example, you can use AKS to deploy the Azure Kubernetes service, to deploy a Fabric network on top of Kubernetes, with containers and everything. But this one here is the highest level one, the blockchain service BaaS, where you encapsulate all the complexity. It's quite easy actually to provision a member, a node member, okay? So here you just select a subscription, a resource group. You can work with an existing one or create, let's say, CLL resource ERP. Oh, here. You select the region as usual. The protocol here, Quorum, or there are other protocols depending on the switch that you are using here. But anyway, here I'm talking about Quorum today. Consortium, you can create a new one, okay? Something like that. Choice here, considering what we can call the shape, in terms of number of cores, storage, and so on. You provide a password here, okay? Okay, let me do something here. But anyway, those are the steps, and you provision your blockchain network, and after that, I'll show you how it works from the IDE, VS Code, okay, as well as from, let me copy this here. Okay. You review and create, and then you start to, what's that? Okay, it can be this one here. Okay, consortium. No one. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I don't know what's happening here. Let me do it again. Sorry about that. Let me see what I'm missing here. Okay, Okay, we can use this one. Okay, consortium. Let me copy. Correct. Okay. Account password. We can have the same one here. I don't know.
On the
Anyway,
basics,
yeah.
Juarez, on the basics, the member already exists. If you go to basics tab, there from the navigation, you can navigate to the basics tab. So it was complaining about your member.
Oh, okay.
It was saying that it already exists.
Let me try again here. Okay, it can be any CL. Okay, that's correct. Member. Okay, CLL and R. Password here. Password here. Yeah, let's start. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so as soon as I create it, I have created this one here. I have one consortium here. That was just to show you how simple it is to create it. Okay. And this one here, I have one member. Okay. This is actually the node. It's a quorum node, so it's for the quorum protocol. Okay, and then as I said, you can check the dashboard with the information about the number of transactions, blocks, and we have data manager, for example. We'll have a presentation about data manager. This is one component that you can use to integrate with external data sources, for example. So it offers you a number of integration adapters and different integration channels and protocols. Okay. But this is just to give you a glimpse about what we have here, considering the Azure portal and the way that we can provision the different components. Okay, it's moving here. But not only that, this one here, for example, is for quorum. Okay, but you can also provision members that are actually Hyperledger, part of the Hyperledger Fabric network and different protocol here. Okay, so you have choices. Let's talk and move to have a look at VS Code now. So we have, as I explained, the Azure Blockchain Development Kit. This is an extension for VS Code that you can use to code the smart contract. Okay. I can show you how to compile it from the command line, but first let me show you how easy it is to do that from the tool here. When you create, we can create a contract from scratch shortly here, but before that, when you create the contract, you have this contracts folder where you have the smart contracts. This one here is .sol, so this is the extension for Solidity, okay, the programming language for Quorum and Ethereum. And I have one skeleton smart contract here. Actually, I just provided a couple of functions here because I want to echo the messages. But in order to deploy it, you can create a connection to your remote Azure blockchain service. I'm connected here. I can show that from scratch later as well. But let's do it. I just click here so you can see how easy it is. I select build contracts. This is the Azure blockchain log output. You can see that the compile phase started here. It takes a while. I think it was already loaded. Okay, yes. Okay, it's compiling my contract. Perfect. And then from here, I can also deploy it. Okay, so I select deploy contracts. I have to sign in first. Let me do it. It can be this one here. Perfect. You can go VS Code. Okay. Then I select the target network. There's a local, you can see the local host address here, a local development environment, because we use Truffle and Ganache as part of this plugin here, the specific tools for Ethereum. But I can select a remote network here, okay? And then the deployment process starts, you can see. Yes, it's echoing some messages here just as part of this process. You can see several hashes here. And as I said, everything uses cryptography, security, and different schemes in terms of the security implementation and the mechanisms. It's almost finished. Okay, it's deployed now. So I can call it from here, from this interaction page. Okay. It takes a while to load, but actually I can show you here. For example, I can also call it from the command line. Okay, so in order to call it, I can first connect to that very same network. Okay, so I need to run this connect command here. You will see that actually on VS Code, the network target that I'm using as an argument is actually the one that you can check here. So this is the name, okay? Because when I will show you the steps here, but when I connect, actually I create this entry here and it points to my environment on Azure, okay? All right, so I can connect here. I hope it's going to work. All right, so I have the shell here, so I can call the smart contract, for example, just to, if you've never seen a real world blockchain, live one, so the time is now. Let me just retrieve the message that I have there. Okay, recorded first. Okay, hello world. So I can create a new one, okay, as part of a new block and transaction. Okay, so, and now I can retrieve it. Perfect, yes, you can see it, it worked. All right, so one last step here. I would like to show you how easy it is to actually create and also let me disconnect here first. Okay, let's start one project from scratch. Okay, so let's say that I want to create one skeleton Solidity project with VS Code from scratch. All right. First thing, you select here new, open folder. You can select one new folder, for example, I don't know, BC demo CLL. And then you select here, new Solidity project, okay? It takes a while to load the extensions here. Meanwhile, let me just finish here. Yes, So as part of those services, we talked, blockchain on Azure. But the three main services, again, we have the blockchain service, the managed platform, workbench that you can use for prototyping, but depending on how you deploy it, you can move the results to production, considering your POC. The blockchain dev kit, we have the VS Code extension and the code samples. We have the workbench, as I explained, with the integration tools and the different things here. And one last thing, I talked about the Medium series, where you have all the steps considering what I'm showing here today, with all the details, configurations, certificates, and everything else that you can follow in case you want to reproduce the steps in the scope of this presentation today. We can now return to VS Code. Okay, the extension is loaded again. Okay, so now I can create a new Solidity project. I have to select a folder. Okay, it can be this one, of course. Let me close this. So it is now creating the new project here as expected. You can see the contracts folder is here. Okay, so you don't need to play with command line tools in order to create this structure here and everything else and adjust. So that's why it's interesting to not only have the right platform, but right tools. Blockchain networks, let's have a look. I can select here, I can refresh and select connect to a network. Just to show you how to create the connection. Meanwhile, Azure Blockchain Service, you select the subscription. Okay, there are a number of different networks here, but I want to connect with this one here. You select the CS, the consortium, okay? And we'll see the member here soon. Okay, it's here, all right? So as soon as we have this project here, okay. I will just show you how to deploy it again. Okay, it's done. So you can see here, again, the bare bones Solidity smart contract, the additional methods are not here, of course. And then you can start the entire process again. You can compile it, you can deploy it, build, deploy, and that's it. The connection, in case you can create the connection from here, you can also create the connection from here, same thing, connect to blockchain network, and then the same thing, subscription, the target network, for example, that's it. This is a different one, okay. But that's it. That's pretty much everything that I have to talk about blockchain today. Just to finish then, the key takeaways. Azure is a very good platform for blockchain because, as I explained, it's not like the other cloud players where they just have a platform. We do have a platform. We do have the right tools. We do have the code samples, and also all the services that can be integrated because blockchain at the end of the day, as a kind of different database or middleware component, it's useless in case you don't have the right data to be tracked and traced, So it's important to also have the right integration tools. And that's what we have with the services that I presented in that explanation about the Azure Blockchain Workbench. We have a number of partners and customers that can help you implement your blockchain solution in case you need, okay? And again, that's it. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present here today. And in case we have some questions, I'm more than happy to answer them from now. Thank you very much, Hugo, and back to you.
Yeah, Juarez, can you just change to the slides with the QR code? So yeah, so before we start with the questions, I would like again to ask you, if you did not have a chance to do it in the beginning of the session, can you please register to this session by scanning the QR codes or basically using the aka.ms link available on this slide. And you just need to fill in a quick short form, and you'll have access to relevant materials related to this session. Also, I want to talk to you about an important event coming soon. So I want to share with you this event provided by our collaborator, European Cloud Conference. So the name of the event is Modernizing to Clouds, and it will run on the 20th of August. And it basically presents different cloud migration strategies and more. And the best of all, it's for free, so you can join for free and attend great sessions with great speakers talking about this topic. To do it, you just need to access to this website available on the bottom of the slide, so www.europeancloudconference.com, and you should be able to see the details of the event and any upcoming events. And now, in relation to the questions, so apparently we don't have questions here, but I actually have two questions for you if you want. So I assume you can hear me.
Yes, you
correct?
can.
Yeah. So the first question is definitely depending, I assume, depending on the protocol that you are using on your blockchain, you may be limited in terms of the options for programming language that you can use. Is it correct?
Yes, correct. For example, as I explained, Quarrel and Ethereum, you can use Solidity. There's also Viper, some new initiatives and languages, but Solidity is the main one. Other technologies and protocols like Hyperledger Fabric or Corda, you can use you can use Java and Kotlin. But Hyperledger for smart contracts, you can use JavaScript, Java, and Golang. Because at the end of the day, Golang, the underlying services like things like Kubernetes, Docker, those components and those projects, all of them, they are coded in Golang. So in Hyperledger, Golang is quite powerful because normally the features, they are released for the Golang SDK first and then for JavaScript and Java. But those three languages, they are also options, So that's it. In summary, Solidity for Quarrel and Ethereum, Java, JavaScript, and Golang for Hyperledger Fabric, and Java and Kotlin for Corda.
Perfect. Yeah, that's good. I don't see any more questions, so maybe we can proceed to close this session.
That's all right. Thanks a lot, Hugo. Again, I would like to say that you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter in case you have additional questions. The content that we prepared today here, you can see the QR code. There are several great resources considering blockchain on Azure, so I do advise you to scan the QR code. And that's it. Once again, thanks a lot, Hugo. It was a pleasure for me to present.
Thank you, Juarez, for a great session. And before we finish this session, I just want to let you know that next week we will have the second session of this series talking about using Quorum on Azure blockchain. The link to the session is in the chat, so you can register and save the spots. And also, last week we started with the series of sessions related to IoT on Azure. This Friday we will have the second session explaining how to connect your IoT device to Azure. I included the link as well in the chat, so you can register to the session. And in case you want to learn more about IoT on Azure, you can join us this Friday. And thank you once again, Juarez, for delivering this great session. And thank you everyone to joining us on this session. Please use the link in the chat to provide feedback of this session using our survey. And we really appreciate your feedback so we can improve our sessions and ensure to deliver the best as possible for you. And have a great day and hope to see you on Friday. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Hugo. Thanks a lot again, and bye, everyone.